To return to her chosen medical field, Beth had to immerse herself in the everyday atmosphere of the department, where she managed to find a place as a novice pediatrician. Jack, already a strong boy, started attending daycare. Kai continued working with children in the sports section, and life in their family followed a pre-planned path. After a few months, Jack's daycare teacher asked Beth to visit her in the methodological office after work. She shared her observations and concerns with the mother, but started with a question. Have you noticed anything unusual in your son's behavior lately? Beth raised her eyebrows in surprise, widening her eyes in amazement. Both my husband and I are very busy at work. We mostly see our little one in the evenings, but he seems healthy and energetic. What exactly concerned you? We were preparing for the morning performance in the group, and the children were having trouble with the traditional dances. Jack and his little partner were going around the music room again. Suddenly, he paled and sat down on a child's chair. At that moment, I didn't think much of it. But your son started stopping more frequently during movements. It seemed to me that his lips were turning blue at that point. Yesterday, we had a scheduled checkup with the local pediatrician from the district hospital, and she advised us to see a pediatric cardiologist with the boy. As a doctor, I'm a pediatrician too, but I couldn't notice anything in my son, Beth sharply replied. However, a thought began to form in her mind. Could she have noticed it? Without wasting time, the next day, she took Jack to her own medical center. The doctor's diagnosis was shocking. Your son has been diagnosed with a rare form of congenital heart defect, which usually manifests only at the age of 3 or 4. The only salvation is urgent surgery. Otherwise, his life will be in danger, and his condition will deteriorate with each passing day. Our city lacks the facilities to perform such a complex surgical intervention. There is expertise in another city where such operations have already been successfully carried out. In this case, cardiothoracic surgeons from Germany, Switzerland, or Israel suit us, where the necessary experience is available. Beth and Jack walked slowly along the path home. For Beth, each step felt like an eternity filled with worry for her little one. The boy's heart was her particular concern, as fragile as thin crystal that seemed unable to bear any strain. Kai rushed from his sports school instantly, responding to her hurried call, while she delved deeper and deeper into the depths of textbooks, notes, and medical literature. It all boiled down to the chances of favorable and fatal outcomes being equally balanced, as though a weight hung on the scales at 50-50. The cost of the rare and complex operation in another city seemed fantastically high. Minutes turned into hours, and Beth and Kai couldn't muster the necessary sum, even after selling their grandmother's old apartment with her consent. Moving to a modest one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts failed to balance their financial situation. In despair, a ray of hope emerged when one of the charitable foundations intervened, and suddenly everything started to move forward. Finally, funds for the surgery were raised, payment was made, tickets to another city were purchased, and belongings were neatly packed. However, at the most tragic moment during the operation, despite all efforts and aspirations, Jack, like the last leaf of autumn, slipped away on the operating table. There was no negligence, no unsteady hand of a doctor, or a grave mistake, just the darkest shadow of a severe illness. Beth, a pediatrician, understood the hopelessness of the situation. She realized that at that agonizing moment, there was nothing to be done, and the feeling of helplessness gripped her heart. When the surgeon emerged from the operating room, a shadow cloaked in the darkness of inevitability, and silently shrugged. At that moment they both understood nothing could change, nothing could rewind that irrevocable line. They didn't release a sigh or utter a word, only held each other tighter, as if it were the sole refuge in that cold, lifeless place, where bright fluorescent lights illuminated the dreadful incident. Devastated by the loss, Beth futilely repeated, "It's time to blame. We missed it, unable to find a way earlier when we needed to go to another city. If we had done it earlier, perhaps everything would have turned out differently." With these words, she headed to the retraining courses for emergency physicians. Her main aspiration became to save at least one life, to compensate for that moment forever burdened by loss. It was then that she first uttered her motto, which became a beacon in her heart. "But you're always responsible for everything." Some just pass through life without realizing it. 2 years after Jack passed away, Kai decided to broach the subject with Beth about the possibility of having a second child. However, she herself felt an inexplicable barrier to this thought. She couldn't decipher her feelings. Suddenly, she no longer wished to give birth, didn't long for the idea of a new little one. Kai, coming to terms with this decision, no longer brought up the topic, didn't impose the idea. His daughter was now by his side, a separate entity from this enigmatic woman unfamiliar to Beth. She even subtly refrained from mentally labeling her as the child's mother. Only one thought remained in her mind. What could her husband possibly share with this woman, seeming to her like a feathered creature from another reality? Recalling that June day when Kai walked through the local park, Beth couldn't have imagined that he would encounter a mysterious girl sitting on a bench with gray-green eyes. She left a peculiar impression on him. Whispering something to herself fervently, twirling a strand of hair around her finger, eating a sandwich, and sipping from a plastic bottle, flipping through pages all at once, with no chaos in her movements. Kai stood frozen in place as if in a trance. He simply fell in love at first sight. When they finally met, he was a bit flustered and uttered the first words that came to mind. But the girl didn't expect that he would pick up on her suggestion and invite her for ice cream the next day at a cafe. In every love story, there are two actors whose memories of love may resemble two similar, but still different tales. Kai and Beth realized they loved each other and strived to be together. They shared intimate moments, were friends, perhaps dreamt of the future, and then together raised Jack. Everything progressed smoothly and harmoniously until tragedy struck, unprecedented and overwhelming. Their son departed this world, leaving them alone. The parents endured the loss of their child, a situation blatantly contradictory to the usual laws of nature. Kai passionately desired another child, but Beth closed this topic, perhaps forever. She felt she couldn't bear another loss, that even the thought of a new little one caused her unbearable pain and distress. In his sports academy, Kai tirelessly trained his proteges, preparing them for upcoming competitions. Two of his students initially achieved victory, winning silver and gold at the city championships, and later showcased their talents at the regional level, breaking through to the national stage. Invitations for competitions nationwide poured in for them, and the head coach hinted that their participation in the upcoming National Cup Championship wasn't out of the question. Beth hardly paid attention to her husband's endless business trips and journeys. She was certain that Kai wouldn't seek adventures elsewhere, and they remained the closest allies who loss had not spared. Each of them tried to cope differently with memories of loss, finding their own ways to survive in this world affected by pain and sorrow. A trip to the picturesque resort city, where preparations for the Josimpic Games were underway, promised to be extraordinary. While the city actively prepared for the global sports event, the coach and his team spent time in Krasnaya Polyana, exploring new places that would be showcased to foreign guests during the competitions. After successful performances at tournaments and acquiring return tickets, it became apparent that the resort city had attracted too many professional athletes and specialists from different countries. Travel documents became a real scarcity, and the coach had to buy a ticket for a sleeping berth for two. His companion turned out to be a girl with a pert nose and blue eyes, heading to his city for a vacation. In this carriage, snug and confined, something unexpected began. The coach and his unexpected seatmate, initially silent and somewhat perplexed, gradually started conversing. Sharing stories about their lives and sporting achievements, they discovered they had much in common. Unnoticed, time flew by, enveloping them in a pleasant atmosphere and an unexpected sense of closeness. She was unusual. Although she constantly spoke about things that might have seemed odd or even frivolous, she didn't know what silence was. She carried her thoughts like a stream, even about the absurdities that, in her opinion, were peculiarities we were not blessed with by a higher power. But all this didn't catch Kai's attention. He was deeply attached to his Beth, and attention from other women held no significance for him. The girl in the compartment was 10 years younger than Kai. When he entered, she was actively chewing on a potato pie, washing it down with a soft drink, and greeted him, introducing herself as Summer. She explained that she was heading for a 9-month-long vacation without days off, working as a painter on construction sites for 2 consecutive weeks. When surprise lingered in the air, Kai silently sat on the second bunk. The train smoothly set off, and after some time, his guys barged into the compartment, teasing the coach in their usual style. Summer didn't engage in flirting with them or try to flirt. Instead, she treated them to pies, grabbed a sandwich, and took a short tour for coffee. Later, they talked about various topics, but the conversation didn't click, and eventually, they decided to just go to sleep. Kai flipped through newspapers while Summer rustled the pages of a detective novel. Both lay on their sides, backs to each other, pretending to sleep. After some time, Kai dozed off and suddenly woke up from a pleasant touch of hands gently stroking his shoulders. "Don't be afraid, brave coach," she whispered. Kai became alarmed, abruptly sat up, turned to her, and hastily said that he was married and had no intention of breaking his commitments. Yet, something inside him shifted, and Summer noticed the change in his mood. And then it happened just like that. The next morning, there was almost complete silence between them. Kai declined the offered coffee, and even the usually bold Summer didn't dare to look at him, as if feeling shame or embarrassment. After the trip, crossing the platform in different directions, they parted ways. Kai was left with strange feelings from that night, and surprisingly, he didn't even consider what happened with his fellow passenger as infidelity to his wife. And suddenly, in this unexpected moment, Kai was interrupted by an unexpected call from the lower hall security, bringing extraordinary news about the search for his companion. Descending, he was stunned to discover Summer's sudden appearance off the train. Her invitation to approach her left him dumbfounded, and through clenched teeth, she whispered something shocking. She was pregnant and needed money for an abortion. Kai couldn't believe his ears. He found himself facing the possibility of becoming a father again. It was something thrillingly unusual, forcing him to pull Summer aside to discuss this complicated situation. He expressed his willingness for her to have the baby, and he would support them but not as her husband. Discussions about details took place, and they decided Kai would provide financial support to Summer upon her request, adhering to the discussed terms. After further discussions, they agreed to postpone the decision about the baby's future until after her birth. Summer took responsibility for her health during pregnancy, striving to maintain a healthy lifestyle. The news that the baby would be a girl reached them after another ultrasound examination. Suddenly, Summer felt a strange sense of determination. She didn't want to stay with this guy. But regarding the girl about to enter the world, she had to seriously consider whether to keep the child herself or give this guy, who had become her baby's dad, a gift. However, the method of resolution was no longer as important. Kai stared at her, pondering. How did I end up feeling so helpless after spending several hours on the train with this woman? He was constantly preparing to talk to Beth, wanting to tell her the whole truth, confess. But he lacked the courage and postponed explanations for the future. He decided that the girl should come into the world first, and then he would certainly confess to his beloved woman. Aurora was born healthy and without any complications, coming into the world quickly and easily. 5 days later, Kai arrived to take Summer from the maternity hospital. Vibrant and energetic, little Aurora surprised her caring mother. It seemed as if an unexpected maternal tenderness had awakened in her. However, the realization that Mom and Dad didn't live together, that their family was non-traditional, became a burden on their shoulders. 3 months after their daughter's birth, Kai proposed to Summer to formalize legal adoption papers, transferring custody and care of the baby to him, allowing her to be relieved of her responsibilities. However, Summer's refusal turned out to be unexpectedly sharp, and she insisted that he shouldn't tell anything to his wife. Otherwise, I will do everything in my power to tear him away from Aurora, she threatened. Initially, Kai hesitated and contemplated the possibility of involving lawyers to protect his rights to adopt his daughter. However, he decided to observe how Summer took care of the girl. He noticed that despite the financial support he offered, she showed no interest in the idea of providing for Aurora financially. Time passed, and Kai got used to visiting his second home, where he was greeted by the joyful squeals of little Aurora. They spent time together, went for walks, had dinners, creating an illusion of a real family. Beth was consumed by work to fanaticism, ignoring her husband's absence. However, when they were together at home, she changed, almost returning to her former self, showing kindness and attention. Once, exhausted from sleepless nights, the paramedics stopped near the Children's City Hospital. Doctors reassured everyone, assuring that the girl's life was not in danger. Kai stayed with his daughter, while Beth had to return to work. Late in the evening, he decided to tell her the truth about the events that happened long ago on the train. By the time of his confession, Beth had almost calmed down, surprised that she didn't consider her husband's brief affair as a betrayal to their family. She felt how eagerly Kai yearned for this girl, who had become the embodiment of his dreams of parenthood. The fates of people are diverse, and the paths that help them find the happiness of fatherhood are unique. Subsequent events began to acquire astonishing nuances. Beth actively advised her husband on which doll to choose for their daughter upon discharge, delighted her with sweets, and gave her gifts for her birthday and New Year's. Once, Kai asked her why Aurora's mother had such an unusual appearance. Kai explained that such radical changes in Sammer's appearance had happened recently, and neither he nor Sammer had anticipated what the behavior of Aurora's mother would lead to pink dreadlocks in her hair and eccentricity. The story of Sammer unfolded in a much more intricate manner, whose heart was captured by the magic of a new painter in their labor brigade. He portrayed himself as a free wanderer and artist, tirelessly engaged in creating her portrait on the wall during breaks from work. His artistry lay in finishing his creative idea, covering his work with a monochromatic layer as if hiding his feelings beneath a layer of colorful paint. Sammer, entirely captivated by this artist, enthusiastically adopted his style, deciding to grow the same dreadlocks as his. However, the man gave her no hints of any possibility of intimacy or establishing a relationship, which only intensified her attraction towards him. As time inexorably passed, Sammer fully immersed herself in imitating her idol the painter. At the same time, she noticeably ignored Aurora, creating an impression as if she remained the perfect mother only when Kai was around. Kai remained oblivious to the changes happening with Sammer, unaware that during the New Year holidays, she felt as if her feelings were soaring, despite the wanderer's warnings about his inclination not to stay in one place for more than 2-3 months. 2 weeks after noticing a longing in his eyes, Sammer decided to gather her courage and talk about something significant, realizing that Kay's wife's secret was no longer a mystery. She proposed they both meet at a cafe to discuss a serious matter. At the cafe, Sammer ordered coffee and sweet treats for the entire company, hoping it would soften the sharpness of the topics to be discussed. However, at that moment, she felt as if she met the man she had dreamed of her entire life. Everyone around spoke of such love as the willingness to go to the ends of the earth for it. She began to contemplate her relationship with her daughter. The desire to organize her personal life prompted her to suggest to Kai to formalize the documents so that he could take on the upbringing of their daughter while she decided to leave. This proposal shook Beth. She didn't object to the idea of Kai's daughter living with them. However, as a mother, she couldn't even think of giving up her own child. The image of her son, Jack, emerged in her thoughts, and she realized she could never give him up. While Beth and Kai discussed the documents, Sammer prepared to welcome Aurora into her family. They promptly and persistently processed all the necessary adoption documents, overcoming bureaucratic obstacles. Thus, Kai and Beth finally adopted Aurora. For the little girl, it was a truly joyful event because she felt happy being with her father after her mother left. Finding it easy to bond with Beth, she quickly adapted to the new family environment, and soon their cozy apartment echoed with cheerful voices. Aurora became an indispensable helper for her dad in household chores and also bonded well, enjoying her time with Aunt Beth. They happily spent time in the kitchen, often gathering for a cup of tea. However, fate decided to test them once again. During a call to their home when another team was supposed to arrive at the station, an unfortunate incident occurred. A nurse, about to meet the arrivals, carelessly slipped on the porch and fell.